what exactly am I doing when I recommend restaurants? I'm a recommendation engine. Well, what else is a recommendation engine? Well, we have Netflix, we have Spotify, we have all these other things. So let's take my brain, the things I think about before I move forward and say recommend a restaurant, and let's build that into a product. That's where it started, and it's gone a million directions.
We're going through something absolutely historic.
Technologies across the board are growing exponentially.
It's a disruption that's going to completely redefine the way businesses compete.
In the next decade, we're going to lose 40% of today's Fortune 500 companies.
The exponential growth of computing is continuing.
AI is nowhere near its full potential.
Whether you like it or not, that the future cannot be stopped by anyone.
Hi there, everybody. This is Mark Verbenkov, and welcome back to the Future Tech and Foresight podcast. This is episode number 151. And in today's episode, we are going to dive into the fascinating world of artificial intelligence and the intersection of AI with the food industry, which is something that I haven't touched on the podcast as of yet. So historically, the food sector has actually struggled to meet the personalized needs and diverse tastes of consumers, often relying on kind of broad trends and general preferences. However, AI is kind of poised today to revolutionize this landscape by offering unprecedented levels of personalization and, of course, innovation. So from enhancing dining experiences and refining culinary techniques to leveraging social media for wider adoption, AI's impact is pretty vast in this space. And today we're going to explore how Resactly is at the forefront of this transformation, utilizing artificial intelligence to tailor dining experiences and overcome integration challenges, while also ensuring, of course, ethical practices as they do so. So my guest today is Fisayo Oluwadiya, and she is the founder of Resactly, which is, of course, the only AI tool that matches foodies and travelers to personalized dining experiences. So she is an accomplished principal engineer who's led teams at Nordstrom and MLB, as well as a longtime food blogger. The intersection of Fisayo's skill and passion was really the recipe for the future of food discovery. So as you'll hear about today, as I just mentioned, Resactly really tries to pair users with personalized dining experiences based on their favorite cuisines, dietary restrictions, favorite social media pages, and more. Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today, Fisayo. It's great to have you here to talk about something I don't think I've had the good fortune to talk about on the podcast before, which I guess is this intersection between AI and food. So it's going to be, I think, a unique discussion.
Yeah, I certainly hope it is. I was completely surprised when I jumped on us that nobody has ever.
Yeah.
It should be a really interesting conversation. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, why don't we start with how that intersection came into your life? Like, what was there? Was there an event, or was there something that sparked your imagination, or whatever, into diving into AI and food?
Yeah, so pretty much what it is that I've been in the tech industry for about 18 years now. I think at year 16, I was like, OpenAI launched, and I'm like, oh my God, Google, I want to be a part of this. So I was trying to figure out what to build, and I was like, okay, let's go into the serious industries that people are really focusing on. Let's do finance, but I really commit. I started my career in finance, but I couldn't commit to any of the ideas I came up with. I just kept on getting bored. Then I had a product in medicine, which would definitely have a social impact, as well as it would have a social impact, which was very personal to me. But I also saw that there was no way I was going to commit to it for the rest of my life.
Right.
It work, but I'm not going to do this forever. So I was looking for something that I had a personal passion for, something that I was obsessed with. And that from birth has basically been food and dining. There's a whole history of food in my life, from all the way from my grandfather being a chef through to me now being a food writer. Started the path of a food writer about 6 years ago. So basically following that path of, okay, I had reached success about 6 years ago on tech. I became a principal, started food writing, hit success on that. Now I'm obsessed with these two. What can I build by combining the two together? And that's where I was like, okay, food, AI, open AI, how do we make this happen? And that's where it was like, okay, well, what exactly am I doing when I recommend restaurants? I'm a recommendation engine. Well, what else is a recommendation engine? Well, we have Netflix, we have Spotify, we have all these other things. So let's take my brain, the things I think about before I move forward and say recommend a restaurant, and let's build that into a product. That's where it started, and it's gone a million directions.
Cool. Well, let's definitely dive into this today. So, but maybe we can start. I mean, I think most people might be relevant with some like recommendation engines that are already out there or have been out there before this new interesting generative AI wave came about. But maybe you could just briefly touch on those, or like the past of dining recommendations, or I guess personalization, which we'll get into later. Just kind of set the context, set the tone for what we'll be touching on later on.
Well, there really isn't any recommendation engine, so to speak, from the dining perspective. You have food writers, you have blogs, you have search. You have places like Google now trying to recommend, oh, we think you will like this based off your search history, and people are going to be like, I don't trust you. It's actually. And you have all of the different reservation platforms saying, how was your dining experience? And then they're basically trying to do pattern matching across the different restaurants based off of where you visited. But they don't have enough information to really truly recommend at a deeply personalized level that I'm currently doing. But pretty much essentially that's the whole gamut that's available from the perspective of recommendations. Most things in the space is still very manual, very human oriented, very one-on-one personal. There isn't like the preemptive introducing technology, having technology in this space.
Right. And I guess because of that, the recommendations are not always the greatest. They're not personalized. They're as I see from many other industries that I'm kind of paying attention to through this podcast as well, you have this general recommendation. I think health is like one of the best examples, right? You have, well, here's health for this demographic, or here's health for, this demographic. And now we're starting to see, well, we're able to personalize health to your specific, as we'll get into it in the future, like your specific genome, right? Rather than your specific blood type or hair type or whatever, right? So there's much, much more specific personal advice that can be given in health. And I guess now with AI, we're also starting to see that with food and dining, which is really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. That's something I was trying to tap into as I did the recommendation. So as I mentioned, that it started as, okay, just a fun thing, recommend restaurants. Then it became, okay, how about I go a little bit deeper and differentiate myself from search and Yelp and all these people and say, let's recommend dishes. Okay, we're recommending dishes, but what exactly does it mean to recommend a dish? Okay, you're recommending a dish a person likes, but do they like it just from the perspective of their taste palette? Or are they also looking at like their dietary restrictions? Do they have allergies? So it actually grows, and there's more of a story to tell, a little bit more complication than just simply, ooh, the waitress says this is a dish that everybody orders.
Right. And I guess maybe the first question, maybe we're already diving right into it, but like, how is that data of that individual gathered? Like you mentioned Google, for instance. I mean, I think Google tracks a significant amount of information from all of us, and you would think that they would be able to already kind of recommend some good dishes or dining spots. That's clearly not the case all the time. How is it that you're going about finding this kind of key data that could help people, find the best dish or the best restaurant out there?
Yeah, so definitely I am focusing on being completely transparent. I'm not sneaking and gathering information about you that you're not actually explicitly telling me. On board onto the platform, I have a very detailed set of steps and things I'm asking for. I'm asking for the ingredients you like and don't like. cuisines. I'm asking for your allergies, your dietary restrictions. I'm asking for how many times you dine out. I'm asking for a lot of very detailed information that you will give me. And based off of that, well, please give me. And based off of that, I generate a dining profile for you. Off of that initial dining profile, that obviously is what I'm making recommendations on. But also then I also need to take note of your behavior on the platform. So if, for instance, you like only German and American food, but I see you every day coming to take a look at French restaurants, okay, I might say, you know what, I think you maybe like French restaurants. So let's. I'm also hoping and trusting that you are going to come back pending future partnerships. I am hoping you're going to come back to the platform and basically give that feedback on what the experience was at that restaurant. So you can give me feedback and reviews at the restaurant level, preferably at the dish level. Providing me with that information, there's going to be a whole lot of natural language processing and feature extraction that I can then use to further personalize the recommendations to you. So the point I'm trying to make is you are giving me information. I'm not going and trying to capture it from the web and the internet. You're giving me information. What you give me is what I use.
And then on the flip side, I would assume that you would have to do some sort of data capture from the internet for the places that are being recommended, or you also have like a number of different restaurants in like various cities across the states and the world that would be on your platform, also recommending like, hey, this fits this kind of profile.
Yeah, so basically for the restaurants and dishes, obviously I need the restaurants to be on the platform. I am currently live in New York, New Jersey, California, Connecticut. I can keep on going. There are a couple cities, but pretty much a lot of foodie locations, and we're onboarding as we see performance, we onboard different cities, but the focus really is on the top cities that one, have a really good network of restaurants, but two, people want to visit to, so we can really engage this audience. So we are getting directly from the restaurant websites their menus. So their menus, the menus and the dishes that they have on the menus. And then there's extraction of, in general, what ingredients are within those dishes. I'm like giving you a high level, not a high level, giving you a recommendation platform as giving you a recommendation as we would expect if we're looking at general internet information. But obviously, different restaurants have different ingredients, for instance. So one restaurant puts sugar in their tomato sauce, and another person puts duck fat. We don't have that secret information. That's where the restaurant onto the platform. And then they have to update this generic ingredient recommendation. So with providing this information, we have a better, more specific, more direct recommendation that comes into place. So really, to answer your question, as far as we're getting the information from the eater perspective, you're giving it to us. From the restaurant perspective, there is retrieval from the internet, but it becomes more personalized when the restaurant onboards and provides that information.
And have you been seeing like some of these restaurants, I mean, clearly are getting some benefits from your platform. Are you seeing them starting to like think like, oh, if I add more information, if I give like you more data, then I can help my potential customers get like even more personalized data? Is there like a starting mental shift, I guess you could say, from the restaurant side of things?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, Resactly started just as the recommendation to eaters. But that as us collecting more and more data, it was like, wait, a lot of this information is actually going to be very useful to restaurants, because the mission behind my company is OKAO. It's going to be focused on building technology solutions for the restaurant industry. My mission was Resactly first, once again, as a fun product. But it became a case of, if I am able to craft this information and provide enough analytical tools for restaurants, I can potentially reduce that restaurant closure rate. It currently sits at about 30% first year, 60% over 3 years. That's really quite ridiculous.
Yeah, that's really high.
So you would think, I mean, technology is something you always bring in that brings solutions to the table. You can't necessarily predict, but you have a really good idea. So basically providing tools like cost competitive analysis, dining profiles in location. So cost competitive analysis, let's say you have a cheeseburger and there are 5 other restaurants within your same zip code that also have cheeseburgers. They're all charging $50, you're charging 30. Do you want to be competitive and bring your price down? Or do you want to put some additional marketing and spin on it to say, this is why you need to come and buy my $30 burger? So providing that kind of data and that information, that's just one of the analytical tools that we provide. We also have, like, for instance, that the same example. Everybody in your area, let's say everybody in your area is a vegan. I use this example all the time because it was the most shocking example I saw. Everybody's a vegan, you're running a steakhouse. You might want to adjust that.
Right, right. At least give one option, right? Yeah.
Exactly. People were walking by, they were looking at the app, where exactly should I go for dinner? I'm a vegan. Oh, wait, there's this place that has 5 menu options, things that I can eat.
Very interesting. One of the things that, and I guess this can kind of fit into the potential challenges or uh, negative externalities of all AI tools, not just specifically yours, but for restaurant and dining experiences. Is there any consideration of, let's say your tool, your platform scales, and for the sake of argument, most people are using it to find the type of restaurant that they want. Is there any concern or fear or thought that like the AI recommendation might start shifting or nudging behavior towards like specific types of food, and rather than enabling people to experience different kinds of foods, they're actually being a little bit more narrowed down into their selection criteria and essential selections later on. I think this happens in other areas, and it's one of the themes that is touched on within AI in general.
Right, definitely. And I mean, it certainly will narrow and personalize to a specific track that that person has mentioned within their profile. That certainly will happen. But you also have to look in reality of what is happening right now. You go into a restaurant, everybody's spending 15, 20 minutes having a conversation with the waitress. What's good here? I'm allergic to that. And they're going back and forth trying to, this is already happening. I'm just basically building an app. So that's one on that perspective. Two, dining is in fact experiential. So from the perspective of, I get this question all the time, isn't AI and food, isn't that going to put people out of work? No, people want to be social in dining. People want to have that one-on-one interaction with dining. Whether it's having it with the people they're having, the 1, 5, 10 people they're having the meal with, or it's you're a solo diner, you're at the bar having conversation with the waitress or the bartender. There's a social aspect to this that AI cannot replace. I know one restaurant in California that went full AI, but it's like the robot is grilling burgers. Not really.
Right.
Not really in that regard.
Yeah, I was actually in San Francisco, I want to say 5 years ago, something like that, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was a fully automated like veggie bowl type restaurant. And they had, I mean, you just put in your order and the food would be ready by some robots in the back. And you get it, took 7 minutes or something like that. It was pretty good, but I think they went out of business because there wasn't enough people coming in. I guess there's only some initial attraction, like, oh, robots can cook my food. You have it once, okay, it's good food. But then, as you're saying, you miss that social aspect, which, we are social creatures. We all require and kind of desire that social interaction, especially around food. When you were talking there, what is your thought on, I guess, the efficiency gains that could be gathered or garnered by the restaurants that are using this? So, you mentioned some 15, 20 minutes figuring out what kind of food you want when you go into a restaurant. That's one social aspect, of course, but maybe it's not the most enjoyable. It's not really what you go there. You're not going there to, pick apart the food and say like, oh, I have allergies, or, I'm vegan or whatever. You're really there to go there, eat food and talk about it, but also interact with the people that you're there with. I mean, has there been some sort of efficiency gains that you can speak to with users that are already using your app?
They can reveal all the secrets.
Yes.
One of the things that hush hush we're working on, not quite hush
Yeah.
hush. Efficiency gains, like one of the biggest pain points that restaurants face right now. Obviously, you're losing the margins of men because you're spending a lot of money, not getting it back. What are they spending most of the money on and wasting it on? Food. They buy so much food,
Mm.
but they're not selling as much. So there's a whole lot of food they're trashing. Food waste. So now bring Resactly into the equation. We're trying to see if we can get people on the platform with the full personalization, pre-ordering. So restaurants are already aware of what exactly is coming in from the perspective of orders. They can look at it a day, week, month, year, whatever the case may be. But the more people we get into that traction, into that pipeline, the more restaurants can gauge what exactly do we really need to order here. And then when you have that information there, once you have that number and that information and that scale, you're ordering directly to that. Now, obviously, there's still a lot of people who are like, well, I want to hold on to walk-in traffic. What happens there? I don't have the answers to everything. I'll be completely honest. But that is a huge chunk of the market that you can save. That's a significant amount of money that you can save. That's a social impact that you can have in addressing food waste, simply by having people put their profiles, their extremely personal profiles, the restaurants log on, they pre-order, and they have this information readily available. That is a very, very big statement and a very big problem that I'm also trying to address here.
Very interesting. Yeah, it makes sense, right? As I said, with enough of these wonderful guests that I get on the podcast, there's enough of these similarities when we're talking about different industries that AI is able to do. One of those similarities, and it kind of goes back to these challenges that other people are experiencing, and I'm sure you are as well. It's about the onboarding or the acceptance of giving your data, even if you're not stealing your data, and it's very open and transparent. I think that there's been enough discussion or cultural awareness of AI and tech, and certainly these giant tech corporations that are extracting data. So people, I mean, they should be more concerned about it, honestly, but there's not enough, but there still is some kind of concern. So have you seen um, some kind of apprehension with using your app and like, oh, like I'm giving away my personal eating behavior, and people aren't necessarily okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, not right now. Because I'm still young, I'm still new, I'm still hip, I'm
Yeah.
still at fun time, and I certainly hope I stay that way. I'm fun to eaters, I'm serious to restaurants. And once again, full transparency on what you're giving me, what I'm collecting. I haven't really had any pushback yet. And since, once again, my goal is to be 100% transparent at all times, I'm hoping I won't have any pushback on that. I mean, certainly, once again, there is that initial apprehension of, you're asking for a lot of things, but approaching it from, this is a fun thing that is not only great for you, you're having a good time with it, it's great for restaurants, and it's great for it's great, and it's going to have a much larger social impact. I'm not having that much pushback because of all of these things I'm bringing into it.
Right, right. Yeah, and it I mean, to me it makes sense. It's just there's always people that get a, how should I say, like a different perception of what the reality of whatever tool it is, and then there's like some kind of pushback or apprehension or something. Maybe connected to that, what about on the restaurant side? So you kind of touched on it a little bit with like servers or waiters thinking that their jobs are going to be eradicated. I lived in Europe for roughly a decade, and one of the projects that I was working on was about they're called collaborative robots going into different businesses like manufacturing and even food. And there was so much apprehension on the side of the workers whenever like robots or automation was brought up as being incorporated into their work process, because that immediate thought was robot comes in, well, my job isn't that technically complex, so therefore I'm going to be eradicated. I'll be, laid off. What kind of feedback have you been getting? I know you touched on it a little bit, but maybe there's some other things that that you want to talk about with regards to that.
I once again, starting with the fact that dining is really social, I really haven't had much pushback, at least from the front of house stack. I really haven't had that much pushback from the back of house. It's actually been very, very welcomed, because even though I'm a dual marketplace, I'm coming from the front side. Tech actually is very slowly but surely going into the kitchens. I will not mention the name of the company because I am potentially having a partnership, but they are doing some very, very interesting things in tech. It was when I was building my things and building the restaurant tools, I started doing some market research and I found them. Everybody uses them, yourself included. You just don't know it. I was so surprised by how much focus, how hyper-focused they are towards hospitality and providing the tools to keep restaurants open and keeping those partnerships alive, and personalization from a dining perspective. They're doing a lot of work there. So me coming into the same ecosystem, it's from a very, very different perspective. I'm bringing different tools to the market that they don't have, but they were already open to it because of these other companies that I'm noticing, oh, they already actually have a little bit of a foot in. Nobody's as technical as me, but a little bit of a foot in. They already are in there. So I really haven't received that much pushback from a back of office perspective. Front of office, nothing. They actually, they're like,
Sure, yeah. Yeah, if it makes their lives a little bit easier, they'll be happy to accept it. Yeah, I think this is another trend that we continually see, right? Is especially as, like OpenAI is in the news all the time, there's a larger and larger public awareness that, oh, like this tech is really cool and it's helpful and it can save you time. So I guess that is getting into, as I said, into the cultural consciousness, and it's becoming easier and easier to adopt in these different industries that you wouldn't necessarily think these kinds of interesting technologies would be entering. One of the questions I've had is, what about the impact of social media? So I'm assuming that your platform is kind of, being advertised for the different kind of demographics that you're looking at, like foodies, etc. Is there going to be a larger impact of social media in the space that you're working in, or is it kind of already stabilized as a technology that people are using and there's not really any kind of new aspect to social media's impact on dining, if you will?
well, I'm still new, so I am still exploring that space. But from a social aspect of things, I do envision to a certain extent this kind of being a new social media platform for people who are interested in food. So for instance, it's like people like restaurants, but they really don't know about them unless they are walking by them or they happen to be following them on social media. It's that, or TikTok, go viral on TikTok. Those are pretty much the discovery platforms, versus coming onto mine where it's like, you're coming onto Resactly, we know you're coming to talk about food. And another, once again, you're revealing the secrets.
Yes.
Restaurants really don't take out advertising. So feeding into this platform where basically you're coming, it's basically a social media, so to speak, for food and dining. They're able to then get that visibility that they want, that advertising, so to speak, without actually having to take out advertising, like running ads and all of that, which would really just drain whatever little money they're bringing in. So that's that from the perspective of the restaurant social media things. From the perspective of the eater social media, I'm trying to take that out of the equation. Because right now, what we have right now is subjectivity of the group from the dining experience, as opposed to objectivity in the dining experience. So trying to make something that's very subjective, it's been made very, very subjective to the taste palettes of other people. I'm trying to get rid of that and make it into the recommendations and solely the subjectivity of your own palette. So that plays around a little bit on the social media aspect from the way we think about it right now. So for instance, like I was just talking about TikTok, Facebook, all of these things. Get rid of all of that and then just bring it into strictly you. But I'm not getting rid of social entirely. There's a feature on there that actually is social. So as far as social is concerned on there, you're able to create groups. You create groups with your friends. Let's say, okay, the group is, I'm looking for French food in New York. You create your groups, you add your friends. Then on that platform, you're on that space, you're able to see group recommendations. So the recommendations level that everybody in the group would enjoy it, and also the recommendation that you yourself will enjoy it. So you get to see those numbers and you can have interesting, fun conversations about, let's do this, let's try that, so on and so forth. You still have that social construct, that social media aspect to things, but the part of like looking at comments on Yelp and using that to the side, that goes away. That's I'm trying to remove all of it.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting because I mean that was the follow-up question I had. Like like I listen to YouTube when I'm cleaning or doing some other stuff, and it seems like the community is the community, right? It's so focused around the comments, and people are willing to watch a video or not based on like the top 3 comments sometimes. So like, oh, I'm not going to waste my time because there's so much criticism of this. So I was just extrapolating from that towards food and dining and like recommendations. I mean, it already exists with Yelp, as you said, but if that's going away and there's going to be a more focus on like the objective aspect of these recommendations, it's I think it's interesting. And I guess you already have the information on the value of that. It'll be curious to see how that plays out over the next couple of years.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
So far, so good.
Okay.
I
Awesome.
won't. I'm going to keep my mouth shut on that.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not.
Perfect. I did forget to ask about the actual AI. So, like, how is AI creating these recommendations? I mean, obviously, we don't need to talk about the technical aspects of it. It's a little bit simpler, connected to like how other AIs are doing the same sort of thing. But can you touch on that a little bit? Because I think that's it's necessary, but it's also interesting for an AI-based platform.
I mean, it's not saying it's straightforward is not straightforward for me because
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
forever. So essentially the way it works, the way as I mentioned, I mentioned before we got on this, we're doing a full revamp. Prior, we were doing a whole lot of natural language processing. So you would come onto the platform, you'd just give like a simple English story of what your dining world is like. How many times do you go out to eat? What are your likes, dislikes? Instead of like doing a whole lot of clicking and answering multiple questions, you just provide a simple English and I do the feature extraction for that. And I already have an engine that has been pre-trained with a lot of different information. So like different profiles, different restaurants, different ingredients. So I already have a model with a lot of data that has already been trained. So when you give me information, it's basically taking that data that you've provided and then running it against my trained model to say, okay, based off of this information they gave me and what the data I've trained you with, what is the percentage probability at the dish level, at the restaurant level, so on. And then I do a little bit more extrapolation and provide that. But we're doing a full revamp because funny enough, where I thought, oh, people would just like to write in simple English a couple paragraphs or something of what they dine, they don't like that. They want the very detailed step of exactly what it is I want. So that's where the whole let's be even more transparent, and I'm really hyper focused on transparency came into play. That's what drove the full revamp and rebuild of the onboarding process, which is currently under development. But that, for the most part, is where it is. I have my data. I have my data. I have my model. I train my model according to. Oh, I've forgotten words right now. But I train my model according to the logic. Let's keep it that simple.
Yeah,
According
yeah.
algorithm, that's the word I'm looking for. I train my model according to the algorithm that I've put together, and the algorithm, with every day that I explore the data that I'm collecting, I'm constantly rebuilding, refocusing. So currently, for instance, I am rebuilding the Gen 1 model, and the Gen 2 and the Gen 3 model, they're completely going to be rewritten. So yeah, it's just continuous building, continuous learning, continuous adjustments.
Okay. Thank you for that. One of the things that you said, I think early on in the conversation, was the kind of demographics, the people that are using the app. It's, in these large metropolitan cities. I think you said like they're more the foodie types, obviously the ones that are focused on food and the experiences. Do you see that user base expanding to some of the more like general population types? Like I am certainly not a foodie. Like I love food, and I will go out to restaurants that are like highly recommended, but I'm not the type to sit down at like, a 5-course meal or something like that in these things. I'm there to like, interact with my friends or family or something like that. Do you see that these kind of personalized recommendations can, I guess, breach the bounds of the general population, or is this going to be like largely focused on the foodie demographic, if that's the right term for them?
I mean, I definitely want to go into the general population. It's just starting in the foodie because that's what I know.
Mm-hmm.
But when I started this journey of podcasts and I was having these conversations with people, I kept on getting the ask of, okay, does it help in my gluten allergy? Does it, I'm vegetarian, does it help with that? I got these questions all the time. And it was because of that I actually updated my model to take these things into consideration. And it's with that and having those kind of conversations that I think I'll naturally be able to expand into the general population, because I'm no longer thinking about it of just, okay, I really am trying to help the restaurants first, but I am actually taking this to be on a natural level, what people would just naturally expect. They're going into a restaurant, either they're already coming in, they know exactly what they're getting with a pre-order, whether it's a fully customized pre-order or a menu item that they've pre-ordered, or it's something that basically it's cutting that time down. It's cutting that time down on the initial dining experience. It's bettering the personalization. It's bettering the personal experience.
Okay, that makes sense. I like going back from things that have been said before. So you mentioned partnerships a number of times, and I know that previous to the recording we talked that you can't mention the specific organizations, but maybe you could touch on the benefits or the values that these partnerships are bringing to you and your platform.
Sure. So one of the organizations, which is the one I mentioned, everybody's using them, but they don't know. They're very hyper focused on personalization from a restaurant perspective, giving them enough data and information that they will be able to maintain personal relationships. So let's say, for instance, there's some with their customers. So let's say, for instance, there's a customer that has come in 5 times, and they usually come in once a week, but they haven't been in 2 weeks. The restaurants will have that information. They'll have the contact information. They'll be able to reach out, like, hey, what's going on? You used to come right on in, give them this offer. So for instance, it's like they always order one thing or the other. Basically, here's some data and some interesting information that you can use to maybe convince that customer to come back in. So that's just like one of the features that this particular company offers. But they're very hyper focused on providing the tools to really provide true hospitality, true and true, focusing on that personal relationship that restaurants need to have with their customers. Once again, that social aspect of things. So that's one company. Then there is a larger organization that is focused on the food waste aspects of things. Right now, they kind of do food preparations off of food that they have left over, so it's not wasted. They have that, but I'm taking a different direction in that. I'm trying to see if there's a way we can partner, but I'm looking at that from a different direction. So kind of like buy back groceries and then actually start up grocery stores in neighborhoods that are not neighborhoods that do not necessarily have access to fresh produce. So pretty much doing that buyback transportation over there. So I'm seeing if there's a way we can partner in that regard. So sure, their focus is on purchase prepared, but I'm looking more from a buyback groceries, let other people prepare the way they want. So that's another partnership. Then there is another partnership. There's another partnership that I am looking at. So it's actually that one I'm not
You're
gonna
not gonna okay.
I'm not gonna talk about because that one is a very obvious person, a very obvious partnership, and I have zero interest in ruining that.
No problem, no problem.
But that's where I'll stop as far as partnerships are concerned.
Okay. One of the questions that I have, so this is also something that's come up with one of my clients with this, reaching out to clients when you have a little bit of data on them, right? So I think it's really interesting, and maybe it makes more sense in the context of like restaurants because there needs to be that kind of more personal connection with people. Is there any concern of like users thinking that they are being, I'm not thinking of the right term here, but kind of like infringed upon, or their life is being like they're prodded, they're being nudged to like, hey, come back, and it's more of a invasion. I think that's the right term. And I know that that's not like the intent, but maybe with this world that we're living in, like I'll be speaking to family or friends about something, and I don't search for it at all. And then, as everybody's had that experience, the advertisement will come up. It's like, what is this? Like, this is an invasion of my privacy. Like, how dare my phone listen to me?
Sure.
Is there any concern that that kind of same sense might be happening, even though the intent is, relationship building with the potential clients?
Right. And I think you just hit the nail on the head. The intent is relationship building. The intent is maintaining something that would already naturally be there. Versus with advertising, it's okay, I'm not necessarily trying to do this. I was just having a conversation. You're listening in, you're freaking me out.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a natural natural world order. I don't know if that's
An interesting way of saying it.
it's like this is what you do anyway when you're on the way out. Hey, come back, see you soon. So it's not something, I mean, it's not something that's so much of an invasion when you get an email from a restaurant because, well, you were there and you were already there. So now they're saying, hey, you know what? We have this special running. It's not something that's so invasive as opposed to, I was literally just looking at a pair of shoes in the store. How am I getting an ad for this?
Right. Yeah. So I guess it's a very different experience that people are going to be getting. Yeah, it's I mean I still think it's such an interesting thing, like how invasive some of these advertisements can become, and the natural aversion people have to a product or a business when that happens to them. And I think it's only going to get worse with AI, right? with these companies being able to utilize the powers that AI can bring. Yeah, it's only going to get worse. I see that so our time's winding down here a little bit. I love focusing on, as I said before the recording, like the next 3 to 5 years. And I guess maybe we can look out a little bit further. Like, how do you see, obviously, everybody in the world will be using your app, and, everybody will get personalized dining experiences. But how do you see the next like 3 to 5 years playing out? And then maybe we can touch on once a type of personalized dining experience happens and it becomes ubiquitous, then maybe how like the world shifts and changes a little bit specifically for businesses, but also for individuals. But maybe first the 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I mean, do a marketplace. So from an eater perspective, you already hit it on the head, exactly what I'm looking for. Extreme personalization. It becomes just like a second habit. You're going somewhere, you bring out the app, maybe even already pre-ordered. The waitress says, oh, hey, you're this table number, I already expected it. We're ready for you, you know? So 3 to 5 years, that's what I'm thinking about from the eater perspective. But I really am going to dive deep and be hyper focused on the restaurant side of things, because I am very passionate about helping restaurants. I love restaurants. I'm obsessed with restaurants. It really strikes me deeply. It's the more research I did into this, I was like, this is so sad. These are places I go and I laugh with everybody, and just to hear how abysmal these numbers were and the horrific closure rates, I was like, I have to do something. So that's why I'm really going to be hyper focused from a restaurant perspective, providing all of those tools, whether it's a recipe generator, whether it's the demographic from dietary, or the demographic from competition where you currently are, competition where you can be located if there's something new you want to create in that space, providing tools for marketing and advertising. Basically focusing on that. I want to see a direct correlation between my tools and restaurants getting onboarded and the restaurant closure rate coming down. I'm not going to take it from 30 to 5 in 5 years, but I want to see that, you know what, I'm making a little bit of a dent there.
Yeah, and I guess as you mentioned earlier on, one of the maybe the best ways that can happen is it's almost like, I don't know if it's free market research, but it's certainly like better market research that some of these restaurants could have right at the beginning. And I think that maybe is kind of like an overall impact on the world, like just how much time and how many resources are wasted, setting up a steakhouse in a vegan quarter, for instance, or like all the different kind of permutations that you can get from these restaurants making these kind of wrong decisions, which leads to the closure rate. So it's not necessarily their fault. I mean, it is, but in a different way, you can see it that it's not. So I think that there's some really interesting societal, like socioeconomic, like efficiency gains, and I think that's just always better for a population and a nation at large.
Yeah, for me, it's like I see only wins. I mean, technology always comes into the space and it creates a revolution, sometimes for good, sometimes for bad, but more times than not for good, until people start abusing it and then it goes crazy. But seeing technology invade the kitchen, or invade is the wrong word, seeing technology permeate the kitchen and seeing changes that it can have on that space, that's something I definitely want to see. What can happen here? How can technology come into the space and how can it help?
Right. Yeah, I bring up the healthcare example a number of times because it's one that's, I think, everybody has to use healthcare at some point in life. Fingers crossed not, but it always happens. One of the things that I keep hearing about, and I think it's been talked about so much, is how AI and all these new emerging technologies is maybe not removing, but reducing the role of doctors and kind of this hardcore objective diagnostician work, and moving the sum of tasks and work of healthcare professionals more towards the human side, right? So like nurses of the future might be more important than doctors, right? Like this is a crazy thought. It really is nuts. But many people are saying that for good reason, right? The trend seems to be moving that way. And maybe that's also what we'll be experiencing with restaurants. There will be a much more personable relationship between staff and eaters, I think is what you guys call them, right? Versus now, like, you go to some of these restaurants and these poor waitresses are just rushing around like crazy, and it's the interaction seems forced, like the foot's tapping, like, okay, I got to get your order so I can move over there, and it's not the kind of experience that you want. But maybe with a tool such as yours, you can facilitate this human interaction that we're all craving all the time. while also making the food experience that much better.
That is exactly the goal.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I think that's a perfect place to end it. Fisayo, I will have, of course, the website of your company up, as well as you on LinkedIn. Are there any other places that you reach out to people, or you have, the desire for people to reach out and follow you?
That is basically how you can reach me. You can reach me on the contact us on Resactly, on my company, on LinkedIn. I read everything.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on. And it's been interesting to talk about AI and food and dining. I didn't think I would have a podcast on this, but it was great to have you on to talk about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this conversation thoroughly.
Great. Thanks again. More personable relationship between staff and eaters, I think is what you guys call them, right? Versus now, like, you go to some of these restaurants and these poor waitresses are just rushing around like crazy, and it's the interaction seems forced, like the foot's tapping, like, okay, I got to get your order so I can move over there, and it's not the kind of experience that you want. But maybe with a tool such as yours, you can facilitate this human interaction that we're all craving all the time, while also making the food experience that much better.
That is exactly the goal.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. I think that's a perfect place to end it. Fisayo, I will have, of course, the website of your company up, as well as you on LinkedIn. Are there any other places that you reach out to people, or you have, the desire for people to reach out and follow you?
That is basically how you can reach me. You can reach me on the contact us on Resactly, on my company, on LinkedIn. I read everything.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you very much for coming on. And it's been interesting to talk about AI and food and dining. I didn't think I would have a podcast on this, but it was great to have you on to talk about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this conversation thoroughly.
Great. Thanks again. Well, thanks for listening to this week's Future Tech and Foresight podcast. If you like what you've heard here, there are, of course, a number of ways that you can support the podcast. The best way would be to leave a review on Apple Podcasts or give a rating on Spotify, which you can find a step-by-step explanation for on the futuretechandforesight.com website. Alternatively, feel free to leave a comment either on the episode show notes or the YouTube channel, where you can see video recordings of the interviews. And finally, if you are part of an organization that is aware of the disruptive and transformational impact that emerging and future technologies will bring and want to know more, please get in touch to hear about the strategic foresight services that we offer and how we can help future-proof your organization and take advantage of the phenomenal opportunities available to survive and thrive in the future.
A lot of future-shocked people and future-shocked institutions in our society are simply overwhelmed.
Once there is superintelligence, the fate of humanity may depend on what the superintelligence does.
Science fact is catching up to science fiction.
The first truly intelligent machine will be the last invention that humanity needs to make.
The only scarcity that will exist in the future is that which we decide to create ourselves as humans.
Within a 10-year design revolution, we can have all humanity living the highest standard of living anybody's ever known.
Progress is accelerating at an exponential pace, and it's going to reach a point where progress is so fast it's going to be a singularity.
We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens.
Every single headline points to the birth pangs of a Type 1 civilization.